Hello everyone, welcome to CST110 13 Monday nights 7 and 9:40 in Battleview. I'm sorry we're not getting to meet tonight. Thank you for watching this. It is important. I'm also going to cover Chapter 1. We can't afford to be missing any more classes. Keep in mind there is no class next week because it's Martin Luther King holiday, I believe it is. So it'll be 2 weeks before we get to meet in person. Anyway, so I am Miss Owens. I will cover more about myself in the next class we meet, but quickly about me, I do have a bachelor's degree in journalism, I have a master's degree in communication, and I've been in the field of education for about 19 years. You are expected to go through the syllabus and be aware of college policies. I have links and some information in the syllabus. There are also links on the left side of Blackboard for the course that have college links that you should be aware of and read. I also have some basic policies that I'm going to go through quickly, highlights from the syllabus that I do expect you to be aware of. First of all, no cell phones or electronics in class. I've had too many people, they're a distraction, they distract people around them. Ideally, you're paying for a college class, you should be paying attention. A lot of the activities information we go through, you're either going to be tested on it, or you have to do something, or you have discussion boards, so I'm not up there just wasting time talking to you. So I'm sorry for that. Class starts at 7, and I expect you to be there at 7. This is DC. I don't want to hear there was a lot of traffic. There's always traffic. It's just the area. There's always traffic. If you're coming from someplace where you know you're going to be cutting it close, just at least let me know, but telling me that there was a lot of traffic really is an excuse to not be there at 7. I will be there at least, usually I'm there 30 minutes early, at least 15 minutes, and I would expect you to be there walking in the door before 7 so that we can start and we don't have all these distractions going on. So that it's in the syllabus, but and I think it's backward as you look at it right now for some reason, at least it is to me looking at this, but so I do need you to be aware of that. And also, number 3, attendance is mandatory. This is not a blow-off class. You can just take the test based on the book and pass it. There are a lot of activities we'll be doing. I will be explaining some of the assignments, projects you have to do. We'll be doing practice. For the groups, once we start the groups, you end up with 2 absences. Once we start groups, you will be taken out of the group and given a 0, and yes, I have done it. Also on speech days, even if you have given your speech, if you're absent the next day that we're giving speeches, I will change that grade to a 0. We need to have an audience there. It's not fair to the other classmates. And also, if there is no outline done, you cannot give your speech. Outlines are due sometime in April. I expect them done on time. We'll be covering material and ideas, help you so that you know what to do. Trust me, I will walk you through everything you need to do. But it's important that you're there. This class is very interactive, a lot going on, and you really need to be there. And yes, all of you are adults, and I saw this on one of the evaluations where someone was like, we're adults, we should do what we want. Well, yes, you're adults, but this is a college class. It is preparing you for the professional world, so I will hold you to professional standards. Everything we are doing is to help your career and to prepare you for the workforce. So just please keep in mind, if you can't handle these guidelines, then maybe this might be a tough class for you, okay? So please just be aware of that. And when it comes to dropping any class, not just mine, but any class, please talk to financial aid before dropping any classes. There are requirements such as being full-time 12 credits. And if you're getting partial aid, it's 6 credits, I believe. I can't remember. It's changed since I was an advisor. But please make sure you talk to financial aid before dropping any class. Make sure that you'll be all right. And then check the website, the nvcc.edu, for any dates, because there are certain dates if you drop before where you can get tuition back. But if you drop at a certain point, you don't get the tuition back. So just please always talk to someone, check the website before you play around with your classes and such. It is highly suggested you have a book for this class, and the website does have the bookstore. If you go to the bookstore link, you can find the book. The final exam is open book and notes, so that's another reason it's good to have a book. You can use the notes. I have the PowerPoints under course documents so that if you're for some reason just cannot get the book, you can print out PowerPoints at least, bring them to class, take notes on them, and that could help you as well. I've had students do that for the final exam. The final exam will be on the first 6 chapters of the book. Chapters 7 through 12 cover the public speaking. So all of those chapters are covered throughout the work on the outline and presenting your speech. And then chapters 13 to 16 cover interpersonal relationships and group groups, so that you'll be covering those chapters through the work you do on your outline. Discussion board posts, there are 6. These are based on the first 6 chapters of the book. So and I do have some of the weeks out of order just because of things that I'm trying to do. So we're covering chapter 13 and 14. There will be no discussion board posts. The discussion board post is only for the weeks that we do chapters 1 through 6. Keep in mind that some of these points are only 15, 17 points. Don't blow it off. I've had students who come to me at the end of the semester. What can I do to make up your grade? There is nothing you can do to make up your grade. I have everything spelled out clearly on the syllabus, what you need to do. And I can't have students just going back doing whatever. And again, in the real world, professional world, you can't just blow things off, come up with some excuse you're busy, and then expect to get credit for it. So I do not allow makeup work. It's due when it's due, and be aware of the due dates, please. It's on every assignment, which I do need to update the assignments on the board, but it's a matter of, you can at least tell we're in the semester. And keep in mind, everything that you have to do, I promise we will cover it in class, so don't jump ahead trying to do things until we have covered it. You can at least be working on ideas, research and such, but I wouldn't start any assignments yet until you talk to me. There is a research review paper due week 7 or so. And this is because a lot of people think communication is just a joke. It's not anything serious, but the reality is you need communication no matter what kind of fields you go into. Even IT people sitting in their little corners all by themselves. At some point they have to communicate their results, what they found, what they're doing with the team, with the boss or somebody. They also have to take in information and listen clearly to find out what is needed before they can do it. So every field has communication. So for the research review paper, you will be researching my field, looking at actual communication research on some topic from the first 6 chapters, and applying it to whatever field you want to go into, because the reality is I get very few communication majors in my class. Usually it's a required class you have to take because it prepares you for your professional world. So just keep in mind, all these assignments, we will actually do them in class. So you have the research review, you have a group project you will work on, and you have an individual speech, plus you have discussion board posts, a final exam, and then there is a grade for attendance, and I do take attendance every week. So that's just giving you an idea of the grading, or at least what's expected, what you will have to do in the class. And I think that's the main things I wanted to cover right now. So these are key points to the class itself. At this point, please write down, and so get a piece of paper real quick and pause the video. I understand the class policies as shown on the paper earlier, as covered the 4 policies I have. This should be included in your discussion post that you will write after this video. So please keep in mind, you do need to write a post, a reply to this, and you do need to mention that I understand the class policies as shown on that backward-looking paper, and it's explained by Miss Owens. So please be aware there will also be other things you will have to do. So those of you actually watching the video, kudos to you. And we are now going to get ready to do chapter 1. So you might want notes because I will have a discussion board post. In addition to the reply to this video, you will have a discussion board post for chapter 1. Okay, so now we are going to cover chapter 1. And excuse me, I've got my PowerPoint up here on the screen and trying to cover it. I'm also getting a little bit of cold or something going on, so I probably sound stuffy and funnier than normal. So chapter 1 covers some of the basics of communication. And if you think about all the ways that you communicated today, many of you, especially if you're snowbound, you're staying at home, you're not really going anywhere, you might have used a computer, cell phone, anyone who still has a landline at home, if you've used that. I know there are these watches now that you can do things. Email, any of you who might written a note. I know in classes they still write notes to each other. It's cute watching my middle school students write notes to each other. So there are different ways that we communicate, and technology has changed a lot of the ways that we communicate. But even with technology, well, actually, because of technology, it's getting maybe a little bit more complicated now. Because of technology, you don't have what's called the face-to-face communication. You have to go by the words that people use, the emoticons, which sometimes the emoticons, emojis can help, but then we kind of wonder if maybe someone just threw it in. But with communication, we have what's called communication competence. And competence is the ability or skill to be able to do something. So communication competence would be the idea that you know how to use this language system effectively in order to share your ideas and hear other people's ideas. There is a communication competence questionnaire on the discussion board post for chapter 1. You will have to post before you can access it. So after you do your post for chapter 1, and again, remember that's outside of doing the reply to this video post, then you can actually access the PDF, and please print it out and bring it to the next class, which I know it's going to be 2 weeks away, so I'll send out a reminder about it on the announcements later next week. So self-perceived communication competence, sometimes people think they're better at communication than they really are. So the questionnaire is just a way for you to honestly think about how you handle different communication situations. It's again an idea of how competent you are. Communication defined on page 3 is the idea of simultaneous, there's shared meaning, human, symbolic interaction, and it's very complex. So the idea of simultaneous, because again with the face-to-face, ideally you're seeing people's faces, you're able to interact at the same time. Shared meaning, if you don't understand the language system that's being used, that could affect that shared meaning if you don't have the same language. And sometimes some people do have a harder time understanding maybe different things going on. And it's a human symbolic interaction meaning between people. And we use that symbol system. And if we think about where we first learn, it's something we learn at home through whoever's raising, taking care of us by imitating the sounds that they're making and then reacting to however they react to us. So, and there's some question as to if communication wasn't understood, did communication actually happen? And if nothing else, it could be the idea that at least you know they're trying to communicate with you, and then you might want to work more on understanding the message. So that's just a quick kind of sum up there. Communication, people sometimes confuse communication with communications. We are studying communication in the class. I actually have my bachelor's degree in communications, and my master's is in communication. So the difference here is of the no S communication. This is the study of creating and sharing meaning between people. It could be jobs and human resources, management, psychology, sociology, etc. But it's just the messages between people, how we're impacting each other, how we're trying to share our meanings with each other. With the S, communications is the study of the various channels or media that are used to deliver messages and their effects on the audiences. And you think about jobs in mass media, advertising, marketing, public relations, etc. So here you get the idea that the audience is farther away. You're not looking at them. The message is being sent out through some other medium besides your voice or a letter or email, and going out to many people at one time. So then we're studying how these messages affect that audience in order to maybe change the advertising, the marketing, whatever it is you're trying to do to further impact that audience. So there is a difference. Communication versus communications are two very different fields, and it's important to understand that. So communications, shared meaning between people, communications, using some kind of medium to send a message out to a big audience. Okay, so that's the basics there. There are 4 reasons to study communication. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep this within 30-40 minutes, so I'm kind of skimming through my PowerPoints here. There are 4 reasons to study communication. The first one is technology, and this has to do with, again, we've got cell phones, computers, fax machines, so many different ways of communicating with each other nowadays, and this is impacting our messages. And any of you who have gotten into a text argument with someone and you get so frustrated because they're taking your words differently than how you meant them, then you'll understand. So it is important to understand the impact technology is having on, and not only for communication, but also for communications as well, because people are not buying magazines, newspapers, books so much anymore. Now they're electronic, and that's a whole different thing because now we can interact and do different things with the technology. So that does make an impact here. And if you think about things that happened in my day, I'm a child of the 70s. I graduated high school in 1980. We heard about things happening in the world. It was usually a few days later through news on TV, radio, or newspaper. Nowadays, things that happen across the world, we are seeing it as it happens. We have people video, Facebook, social media they're using, and we're seeing things as they happen. So a lot of people somehow think the world has gotten scarier and more terrible because now we're seeing everything as it happens. And really, if you look at stats and all, there really haven't been much changes. Is that now we have access to all this information 24/7, and news media now having their audience, they're constantly refreshing, changing the story, doing it up because they are trying to keep the audience coming back to their website or whatever, because it's 24/7 now. So keep in mind, technology has had a big impact on the way we communicate. Jobs and communication. In any job you have to somehow communicate with others. So it's important to understand how your job is affected by communication. We're getting where a lot more jobs have more teams, groups working together. You have all those different personalities together. That's going to affect the group, how they interact, and you will see that when you do your group project. We also think about social media in our jobs. How many stories have you heard where someone got fired because of something they posted online? It's important now. Me as a teacher, I cannot go online and say, oh my gosh, Nova students are so annoying. Because if you happen to hear that or see that, how is that going to make you feel about me as your professor? You're not going to like me too much. You're going to be a little bit annoyed with me and not happy with me, and maybe not trust anything I tell you. So with many jobs, you have to be careful, be mindful of what you're saying, posting online, because the example, a little girl who got hired by somewhat Pizza Hut, she went online saying something about, oh, I start at Pizza Hut tomorrow, kill me now. Well, she forgot she had the manager online. The manager saw it and said, well, since you're hating the idea of working for us so much, don't bother coming in. And she got fired before she even started. There's also a woman who worked for a daycare who was going on about hating little kids so much. You're working with people's kids. Now you just totally lost their trust. She lost her job. And if you think about other jobs too, the company, if you're online bashing that company, that does not help their public relations, how they look to the public. And again, anytime you're posting, if you don't have valid reasons, sometimes it's people just griping or whatever. But that tarnishes that company's reputation, and especially if maybe you're the only one who feels that way. So it's a matter of, there is a point. If you have a job, you work for someone, you don't go online and start bashing them. If you have an issue or problem, you go in and talk to someone and do something about it. Now, there's obviously serious things going on that's a little different, but then you still don't get online and bash them. You still take the steps, do something about it to help other employees as well. So this is something nowadays that we really have to be more mindful of with our jobs, communication, think about social media, how we're using it. A lot of companies have their own Facebook things now, and keep in mind that anytime you apply for jobs or apply for your 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, they're not searching for you. They're going on Google, and it wouldn't be a bad idea at this point in your life to think about, how does your social media reflect you? How do you appear to people? What are some things? Would you want your grandma? I always use grandma as a good point. Many people don't like the idea of their sweet little old grandmas knowing stuff about. Well, if you wouldn't want grandma to know this about you, you probably don't want employers and schools to know this about you either. So now is the time to clean up your social media, maybe delete it, start a new one. Be mindful about reposting out there. Go to Google, search for yourself, see what kind of things come up about you, because these are the things that jobs, schools, and such are going to be doing as well. And this is how they're going to get their impression of you, what kind of person you are. So something to be mindful of. And yes, there is a point where we have privacy and we have rights to say things, but again, doesn't hurt to be a little bit diplomatic and tactful with your online presence. Communication and ethics, the idea of ethics, being ethical, being credible. People trust you, can believe in you. We hear about politicians who are doing things, a congressman who tweeted a sexual graphic. I think it was more the point, it was a government phone. So again, kind of what you do in private is one thing, but when you're using government official phones, computers and such, you've lost your right to privacy. That belongs to that company. You have no right to do such a thing. Sharing information, I mean, there comes a point where what right do you have to share some information? Plagiarism is a big thing. Nowadays, I've seen my high school students come in, Miss, can I use your computer? I'm doing a research paper. And then I watch them copy and paste and print out. I'm like, whoa, 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 you did not write that paper. You just totally stole that from other sites online. That is not writing a paper. So something to be aware of. We're seeing more. We actually, when you send in your outlines, it will go through a plagiarism site, SafeAssign, to ensure that you are actually writing your own work and citing any information you have. If you are, even if you paraphrase it, you have to cite it. Pictures, this is something we'll talk more in detail, but the idea of any graphics and such you use. For businesses especially, if you're taking photographs, pictures, graphics, and using them on their job website, you can actually cause them a lawsuit. So ethics is just the idea of any communication, any information you're getting, that you're giving credit, you're using it the right way. Think about Hitler, one of the greatest orators of all time. He definitely, yes, he was effective, but he totally misused communication to do evil, to do bad. So things to consider, you know, if you wouldn't want someone to do it to you, then don't do it to others is a good guideline to go by. And then communication and multicultures. I mean, our world, our country, we look at our country, we are a mix of pretty much almost every person around the world is represented somehow in the United States. So we want to be mindful that we have a lot of different cultures in a lot of different ways. I had a friend in graduate school in Buffalo, New York. She was from Russia, and I remember her talking about how when she first came to the States, she was so upset and so offended because people were smiling at her. And in Russia, you don't smile at strangers because it's not sincere. And that kind of explains, you know, the United States has always viewed Russia as being a very cold society because when they smile at people, they believe that it should be sincere. So when you have all these different cultures, different things going on, the way we communicate could definitely cause a lot of misunderstandings. And if you think about, if any of you are working or, you know, in high school, being in classes and wondering why someone said or did something and then realizing they're from a different culture, there are reasons. You know, a lot of places do things in a different way. Some cultures are about saving face. You don't ever say anything negative to someone, so that can lead to false feelings of a friendship that maybe it's not really there. And when you have all these different cultures, definitely a lot of misunderstandings. When you have different languages going on, even if they're using English, maybe they don't understand it clearly enough. So a lot of things to consider with all these cultures. That communication will definitely be impacted by different types of cultures and how they perceive things. And let's see, jobs. If you do have, when we think about jobs, we have our translator at school. She speaks Spanish. She's actually Hispanic herself. She's from Bolivia, and she understands the Hispanic culture better. So when she talks to parents and she's listening to them, it helps her. She kind of understands more where they're coming from because she can understand their culture, which can help us then as teachers when we're dealing with parents to understand what's going on, because we have someone who understands the culture to explain the things going on. So it's something to consider if you do speak other languages, to be able to read, write it, speak it proficiently. There are definitely a lot of job opportunities out there where they need people who speak the language and understand the culture. Some principles of communication. Keep in mind that communication is a process, which means it is always changing. If you think about the way our language is changing, people back in the 50s, the idea of us holding a mouse would probably freak them out. What? A mouse? No, you kill it. You don't hold it. But now we have this little thing called a mouse that we use on our computers now. So just a lot of things that change. It adapts to society and the culture as things change. Technology brings a lot of changes, so that's why it's a process. It's always changing. It's a system. They're interchanging parts. And I'll cover that in a little bit. I have a little diagram for you, which might be backward. We'll see. But we have all these different parts: the sender, receiver, the medium, the channel, noise, which is interference. We have all these different things that go on as we're speaking, and we don't even think about it, but it's always impacting. Right now, I'm using oral communication to speak to you, but the medium is through my laptop, through the video that you will be watching later. You'll actually be able to stop, pause, go back, listen, things that you can't do so much when you're speaking face to face, because you kind of, unless you want to keep asking the person to stop and repeat, which could be annoying, that would be one advantage of having the video. You can actually stop it, go back, and re-listen. It's transactional. You've got the back and forth going on. You have the face-to-face versus technology, as I just mentioned, some of the benefits there of each. You have intentional and unintentional. If you think about the person you see in a grocery store and they're tapping their foot and looking all impatient, and you're thinking, wow, this person is really just in a hurry, maybe not realizing the real problem is they have to use the bathroom. So, doing that little pee-pee dance where they're trying to kind of keep their body under control, waiting so they can go use the restroom. So that could be intentional, unintentional. We have what's called nonverbals. We have the misdirected messages. So these are just kind of the basics of communication. And then we get to the actual components, as I mentioned, and I'm not sure how this is going to look. I didn't realize it would be backward maybe, but we have a sender, okay, who encodes the message. They send it through a channel, which could be email, maybe face-to-face, telephone call. So that channel is going to determine how the message looks, and then the receiver receives the message. They have to decode it. If there's a language issue, that could affect the understanding. You have these little zigzags here, which is the noise or the interference. If you have a headache, maybe there's a language barrier, you're cold, you're hot, you don't feel good, there's actual noise going on, maybe that's affecting the message. So something can impact that message, either between the sender or the receiver. Maybe the sender is in a hurry and they're rushing it so that it's hard for the receiver to understand it, or maybe there's something going on with the receiver. So it could be either way. And then you have the feedback loops here, where now the receiver has decoded the message. Now they have to encode to send another message back. The feedback could be as simple as putting your hand to the ear because you're trying to let them know you can't hear them well. Maybe a funny look on your face because you're not quite understanding them, or maybe a thumbs up and a smile and nodding the head. Yeah, I got it, I understand. So feedback could be simultaneously as you're communicating, or it could be an actual message sent back as feedback. So this is the basic model, and you should understand this. It's the basics, and this is part of what's called the transactional model, because it's a loop kind of going back and forth, okay? And that's on page 16. If you look, you can see it more clearly in the book. There are different types of communication. We have the first one is the intrapersonal, intra meaning within. So have you ever had that where you speak to yourself, you're like, oh my gosh, that was a stupid thing to do, I did that, or maybe you're thinking to yourself, what should I do? I'm hungry, what do I want? Okay, so interpersonal is where it's the only one that occurs without the model of that communication. There's no feedback because it's all in your mind, you're just kind of speaking to yourself. Then you have the interpersonal, inter meaning between personal persons. So this could be a dyadic with two people, or maybe a small group, maybe 3 or 4, because you're speaking to each other. And it's just it's easier, it's less confusing because you can actually go back and forth, ask each other, and kind of double check. Once you get to more than 3 or 4 people, you're getting more into small group up to large group, and that could be a different. And anyone who's ever been at a party, then you have a lot of people. You notice people are often these little small groups because it's easier to speak interpersonally in small groups than to be in one big group trying to have interpersonal conversations. Once you do get to larger groups, then you have one person speaking. Then we get to what's called public communication, and this is one person speaking, and they have some kind of audience. And there are 3 purposes, and we'll cover that more, but this gets into the public speaking, the informative, persuasive, entertainment. And then we also have Aristotle, which we'll talk more about some of his principles clearly. But feedback is limited here because in interpersonal, you can kind of double check questions, but when you have public speaking, now like in classes, when it's the teacher with the class, students can raise their hands and it's a little less formal, so it's easier to do the feedback. But if it's an actual speech, you're attending a big speech with a large audience, you can't really do that. That would be considered maybe rude, interrupting the speaker while they're speaking. They might have question and answer session at the end maybe to get more feedback. And then you have what's called mass communication, and this gets into the study of communication specifically. And you have individual, you have multiple consumers. The different channels here would be radio, TV, magazines, newspapers, books, movies. And here, you don't see whoever is sending the message. You don't see that person, and the person doesn't see the audience either. It just kind of goes out there. People consume by these messages, and they watch them separately or in groups or something, but there's none of that. There's no way of having an interaction unless maybe through, nowadays with online, you can have different websites with blogs and such where people can actually ask questions and such, and so that's how technology has changed the mass communication field, because now almost every company has a Facebook, a Twitter, something going on, Instagram, so that they can actually interact with the audience in probably a more effective way, because you get much more quicker feedback with that than writing a letter and then who knows where it goes off to, and they don't have to bother answering because no one will know you sent a letter. Now online, the whole world can see that you sent a message and they kind of have to reply now, so it's kind of changed that a little bit too. So those are the types of communication. Social media versus face-to-face, as we know, anyone who's talked to friends online, you get into arguments, it's so much easier to have misunderstandings, and yet it's quicker, it's convenient. How many people send birthday cards out now? Different holidays, we don't really send cards out so much anymore. No one uses the snail mail, as they call it, the post office, because it's so much quicker to just go on social media or email or something and send it out. The interactivity, as I said, with businesses now, a lot more businesses are finding having an online presence brings them in more contact with their consumers, their audience, and it's changing the way they do things. And at some point, we'll talk about the little boy with Down syndrome for Oshkosh Bagosh, and how social media really changed something that in the past would have just been forgotten and dropped off and not an issue. There's the temporal structure. We have the synchronous versus the asynchronous. Synchronous meaning same time, asynchronous different times. Sometimes the advantage of being asynchronous is like if you think about text, email, social media, you have time to think about the answer you want to give, and you can delete your answer, rewrite it, and get it perfect. Where in face-to-face, once you say it, you can't take it back. It's done. So there are some advantages that way, but a disadvantage is that maybe by now, whatever reply you had, maybe that person has moved on and they don't care anymore, so there could be a difference there. Social cues, the idea of reading people's faces, body language, seeing if they're getting it, upset with you or something, you kind of lose that with social media, which again, that's how we get into more issues, problems. You have the rich versus lean, the rich meaning face-to-face, where you can actually see and look at someone and see them. Phone call would be the kind of the next richest, richest obviously being the face-to-face, but phone calls would be because you can hear the tone of the voice, and they always tell you smile when you're talking to someone because they can hear your smile. The least lean, the least rich, the lean tools would obviously be text, email, because you can't see anything, you can't hear the voice, you can't see the body language, nothing. If you think about replicability, With technology, you can save it, have it, and go back to it. You can copy and paste, so you can send multiple things out. You don't have to worry about trying to remember things so much because it's there. You can go back and find it, because, once it's online, it's out there forever. And storage, that point there, you can, good and bad, saving things people can bring back. Once you put a picture out there, just because you delete it doesn't mean it's gone. Someone could have screenshot it, saved it, something. So that's something to be mindful of. Your reach, they talk about going viral. Ted Williams was a homeless man who, I can't remember, had something to do with him singing, doing something. It went viral, and he ended up, someone actually hired him, and he got off the streets, got a good job, because it went viral. So keep in mind too that going viral can be a good or a bad thing. There are a lot of things going viral that are actually pretty embarrassing for that person in it, and you have to feel kind of bad for them. And then mobility. The problem now, you can always reach someone. Think about the times you want to get your mom, your dad, sister, brother, boyfriend, girlfriend, and you always have your phone with you. I know you can hear it. So that's when you tell them, like in my class, I have a really mean professor who won't let me use my phone during class, because I promise you I will not be using my phone during class either. So the idea here to escape, there is no escape anymore with our mobility, having cell phones. They can track us anywhere now. They even got GPS and location things on it so they can find us. So that's the idea. Social media. Some last thing, myths of communication. Communication is a cure-all. There are times that, yes, talking about things, clearing the air can be good. I actually just cleared up a little misunderstanding with a friend of mine, and it makes me feel good that we finally were honest and kind of told each other how we were feeling. But it's not necessarily as a cure-all. Sometimes people think talking about it is enough. No, you have to really mean it, and maybe there is no. Maybe it can't fix something. Maybe it's done. Quantity means quality. No, talking a lot does not accomplish anything. It's the idea of how good is that communication. You can say good things with just a few words. So you want to be mindful that short and sweet is sometimes better. Meaning is in the words we use. So it depends on how everyone has their own idea of what love, happiness, success is. So you want to the words are important, but you want to make sure that everyone understands how you're using that word. You may need to define things. We have a natural ability to communicate. Well, we are social creatures. There is proof that if we don't communicate, this causes people to go to depression and such, but it is something that is learned. You can actually become a better communicator, hence this class. And communication is reversible. Once that communication, that message is out there, you can't take it back. You can delete it. It's still going to be there in the mind. So you want to keep in mind, it is not reversible. Once it's out there, it's out there. So this covers chapter 1. You will have 2 discussion board posts. You're going to reply to this video. I want you to make sure you state that you understand what time class starts, plus the other assignment I gave you. And then just your thoughts on the syllabus information, what I covered in chapter 1, which I apologize is quick, but I'm at 38 minutes now, so I'm trying to keep it under 40 minutes. And also do chapter 1. There will be a post on chapter 1, which I don't want you telling me what the book says. Please do not go on the chapter 1 discussion board post and tell me what communication is. I want you to think about what I covered in this video, something that you're like, aha, I have an example. Give me that example. Give us, because this is where you interact with each other. Explain a time that you had a communication instance and how it applied to something I mentioned and how it impacted you or the people involved and what you think of it. And I want 150 words for that post. And then you reply to 2 others. Keep in mind, you also need to print out that handout that you cannot access until you make your first post. And then you will go and do 2 replies to 2 other people, 1 reply to 2 other people. So there are 2 replies, 2 different people. You need to address each other. Hello, classmates. What I thought was interesting in the video, the chapter 1 was this. Cheers, and then sign your name. When you do your reply, hello, Sam. I agree with this because, I don't agree with this because. Always give reasons, explain why, and then take care, Sam, or whatever. But I want you to address the classmate or the class in general, and then sign your name at the end. Use proper grammar, punctuation, spelling. My pet peeve is a small I for the pronoun I. It is always a capital I. Remember, I am an English teacher. So do the post for the chapter 1, and then also reply to this video just to me with just your thoughts on anything that I mentioned in here. Introduce yourself, something. And thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.